What if I told you that the 12 tribes of Israel never truly vanished, that their blood still flows, their destiny still lives, and their story is far from over? And you might be one of them? Welcome to our channel, where we tear back the curtain of history, unearth lost prophecy, and speak the truth the world tries to bury. Today's revelation? It's not just history, it's your history. It's our inheritance. This is the complete and untold story of the 12 tribes of Israel, from the loins of Jacob to the lost lands of exile and the prophecy that says they shall rise again, because this isn't just a Bible study. It's a spiritual excavation. Before there were kings or kingdoms, before there were priests or prophets, there was a man named Abraham. And to this man, in the twilight of his years, God made an outrageous promise. Your descendants shall be as countless as the stars. But how could this be? Abraham was 100. Sarah was 90. Their bodies were worn, their womb barren, their hope all but buried. Yet the God of Israel, the God who laughs at impossibility, breathed life into the barren. Out of a womb the world had written off came Isaac, the promised son. A miracle child. A living covenant. His birth wasn't just biology, it was a divine disruption of nature itself, proving once and for all, nothing is too hard for the Lord. Isaac would father Jacob, and Jacob? He didn't just receive the promise, he wrestled for it. He fought with men, he struggled with God, and in the breaking of dawn, he received a new name, Israel, the one who contends with the divine. From Jacob came 12 sons. But these were not mere children. They were foundations, forefathers, vessels of prophecy. Their names were not random. Their stories were not accidents. Each one carried within them the DNA of destiny. And when Jacob lay dying, he didn't give a father's farewell. He delivered prophetic fire. Genesis 49 is more than a chapter. It is a sacred scroll, a divine blueprint, a spiritual map that outlines the future of 12 tribes and foretells the rise of nations. Now come closer. Let's walk tribe by tribe, name by name, and uncover the eternal power God placed inside each one. Chapter 3. Reuben, the fallen firstborn. Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, entered the world with glory written into his very name. He was the eldest son, the strength of his father, the beginning of Israel's might. He stood at the threshold of honor, holding the keys to leadership, the priesthood, and a double inheritance. All the rights of the firstborn were his by divine design. He was meant to lead nations, but power without restraint is a dangerous thing. In a moment of lust and reckless ambition, Reuben defiled his father's bed by sleeping with Bilhah, Jacob's concubine. It was not just a personal failure, it was a violation of covenant order, a disruption of divine alignment. He dishonored his father, his household, and the God who had destined him for greatness. And Jacob, with the clarity of prophecy in his final breath, spoke not blessing, but judgment. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, but unstable as water, you shall not excel. Unstable, unreliable, unworthy of the mantle he was born to carry. Reuben's fall was tragic, not because he lacked promise, but because he lacked discipline. He teaches us that position does not guarantee permanence. Privilege can be lost. Greatness can slip through trembling hands. Once the crown prince of Israel, Reuben faded into the shadows of history, a symbol of squandered potential. He became a living parable that echoes through the ages, the firstborn who became the forgotten. Let he who has ears, let him hear. Chapter 4. Simeon and Levi, the warrior brothers. Born of the same womb, Simeon and Levi were more than brothers. They were bound by a fierce loyalty, forged in blood. When their sister Dinah was violated by the prince of Shechem, they didn't wait for justice. They became it. With swords concealed and vengeance burning, they struck down an entire city. Men, families, futures, all swept away in a storm of wrath. To the world, it looked like honor. But to their father Jacob, it was something darker. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. This was no praise, it was a rebuke. Their rage, though rooted in justice, became unbridled violence. Their zeal became a curse, and the inheritance of leadership slipped from their hands. Yet even in that curse, God was already writing redemption. Though Levi was condemned alongside Simeon, he would later rise again. Not with a sword of vengeance, but with a calling of holiness. When Israel sinned at Sinai, it was the sons of Levi who stood with Moses. They drew their swords once more, this time for righteousness, and God honored them. From the tribe of Levi came Moses, the lawgiver, Aaron, the high priest, and the entire Levitical priesthood, a tribe set apart to stand between God and man. His curse became a calling, his wrath refined into worship. But Simeon did not rise. His tribe faded into the backdrop of history, absorbed into Judah, never regaining prominence. Two brothers with one fire, yet only one was purified by it. Such is the difference between vengeance and vocation. Chapter 5. Judah, the lion who would carry the scepter. Judah was not the eldest. He wasn't the strongest. He wasn't the most righteous. Yet when Jacob opened his mouth to prophesy, it was Judah who received the crown. Judah is a lion's cub. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes. This wasn't just a blessing, it was a divine coronation. Judah had tasted failure. He sold his brother Joseph into slavery. He bore the shame of betrayal. But somewhere along the way, Judah changed. He rose to intercede, to lead, to offer his own life for the sake of his brothers. And that transformation opened the door to destiny. From Judah's line would come David, the shepherd king who slayed giants and ruled a united kingdom. And through David would come the Messiah, the root and offspring of David, the true Lion of Judah. Jesus Christ. Judah's tribe would become the tribe of kings and conquerors, the royal bloodline through which the kingdom of heaven would enter the earth. Not the firstborn, but the foretold. Not the perfect, but the purified. Judah reminds us that God doesn't choose based on birth order. He chooses based on transformation. Out of Judah roared the lion, and to Judah was entrusted the scepter. Authority, dominion, legacy. And that scepter, it still hasn't departed, because the lion still reigns. Chapter 6. Zebulun and Issachar, the blessings of the earth. Not every tribe was called to rule with a scepter or the altar. Some were called to build, to carry, to connect nations, and to understand times. Such were the tribes of Zebulun and Issachar, brothers in blood, partners in purpose. Zebulun was destined to dwell by the sea, his borders kissed by waves, his future tied to ships and sails. Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, he shall become a haven for ships. He would become a merchant, a trader, a bridge between peoples. Zebulun's call was global. His hands touched gold, spices, goods, and distant shores. He represented commerce and connection, carrying Israel's influence far beyond its borders. Issachar, by contrast, was no sailor, but a burden-bearer, a strong and steady worker. Described as a strong donkey, Issachar carried the weight no one else would. Yet he was more than muscle. He possessed a prophetic gift, understanding the times and knowing what Israel ought to do. The mind behind the movement. One labored in trade, one labored in thought. Together, they embody the sacred partnership between industry and insight, between provision and prophecy. In Zebulun and Issachar, we see that not all glory wears a crown. Sometimes it drives ships and tills soil. Sometimes it discerns seasons and guides the nation. One tribe moves the earth, the other understands the heavens, and both, in their own way, carry the blessing of God. Chapter 7. Dan, the judge who became a serpent. Dan, his very name, meant judge. He was destined for justice, born to stand as a guardian of truth among the tribes of Israel. And for a time, he did. From the tribe of Dan rose Samson, the mighty deliverer, a man anointed with supernatural strength, raised up to strike down Israel's enemies. The tribe had potential, power, promise. But something in Dan's story twisted. Jacob's prophecy over Dan was hauntingly poetic. Dan shall judge his people. Dan shall be a serpent, by the way, a viper along the path. A serpent in the same breath as judge? That contrast would define Dan's legacy. While judgment was his calling, deception became his practice. It was Dan who introduced idolatry to Israel on a national scale, establishing a graven image and corrupt priesthood in Judges 18. What began as justice slithered into compromise. Dan strayed far from his assignment. And the consequence? When we read Revelation 7, the roll call of the 144,000 sealed tribes, Dan is missing. Some believe this omission is no accident. Could it be a warning? A mark of judgment on the tribe that once stood for truth but embraced deception? Dan's story is a sobering tale, that calling without obedience can lead to corruption, that the serpent can dwell even in the judge's shadow, and that no tribe, no matter its strength or name, is immune to falling away. Dan was meant to judge, but became the one judged. Chapter 8. Gad, Asher, Naphtali, the tribes of strength and abundance. Among the sons of Jacob were 3 tribes often overshadowed by Judah's royalty or Levi's priesthood. But don't be fooled. Gad, Asher, and Naphtali were blessed with gifts that moved kingdoms in quieter yet powerful ways. Each carried a divine signature: strength, abundance, and beauty. Gad was a warrior born. Jacob declared, "Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last." This was a tribe bred for battle. Always armed, always alert. Gad settled east of the Jordan, guarding Israel's flank with valor. His warriors were fierce, swift, and loyal, the kind of fighters you wanted at your side when enemies closed in. Gad's strength was not just physical, it was perseverance under pressure. Asher, on the other hand, bore the blessings of wealth and provision. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainties. His land flowed with oil and bounty. Asher fed kings. He represented the prosperity of obedience, the harvest of God's favor. And then there was Naphtali, the artist, the free spirit. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He gives beautiful words, graceful, swift, poetic. His tribe was marked by freedom, by speech that uplifted, and by movement unhindered. Where Gad brought war and Asher brought wealth, Naphtali brought inspiration. Together they formed a trio of divine balance: the sword, the supply, and the song. Strength in battle, abundance in harvest, beauty in expression. Each a testament to the many ways God blesses his people. Chapter 9. Joseph, the double portion. Joseph, the dreamer, the beloved son with a coat of many colors. He saw visions of greatness when he was still a boy, but the road to fulfillment was paved with betrayal. Hated by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison, Joseph's life reads like tragedy. But what man meant for evil, God meant for glory. From the pit to the palace, Joseph rose to become Prince of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. He interpreted dreams, saved nations, and reunited a broken family. He wasn't just preserved, he was positioned. Jacob, knowing the depth of Joseph's journey, gave him more than a blessing. He gave him a double portion. In a move both prophetic and profound, Jacob adopted Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, as his own, elevating them to the status of tribal patriarchs. Joseph is a fruitful ball by a well. His branches run over the wall. His blessing was not contained by borders. It overflowed. Ephraim and Manasseh would inherit lands, blessings, and legacies as 2 tribes instead of 1. A unique honor that multiplied Joseph's name across Israel. Where others were confined to boundaries, Joseph's line reached beyond the wall, beyond tribes, beyond borders, into other nations. He is the symbol of resilience, of favor under fire, and of blessings that cannot be contained. Joseph's life reminds us that dreams delayed are not dreams denied, and that when God blesses you, he does it in double portion. Chapter 10. Benjamin, the wolf tribe. Benjamin, the youngest son of Jacob, born in sorrow but destined for strength. Though the last in birth order, he was never the least in power. When Jacob blessed him, he didn't speak of tenderness or diplomacy. No, he saw fire in his eyes and fury in his future. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, in the evening he divides the spoil. Benjamin was fierce, loyal, and dangerously unrelenting. His tribe was small, the least in numbers, but don't mistake size for weakness. The Benjamites were warriors of legend, archers and slingers, swift and lethal in battle. When others hesitated, Benjamin charged forward. From this wolf tribe came Saul, the first king of Israel, tall, commanding, chosen to lead before David. And centuries later, another Benjamite would rise, a Pharisee named Saul of Tarsus, who became Paul the Apostle, the man who carried the gospel to the nations. The same boldness, the same relentless spirit, now redeemed for righteousness. Benjamin stood with Judah when the kingdom split. When civil war tore through Israel, it was the tribe of Benjamin that held the line, sometimes alone. They were few, but they were fierce to the end. Benjamin's legacy is not measured in numbers but in tenacity. He represents those who fight when others flee, those who hold the line when the world falls apart. He is proof that even the smallest tribe can carry the fiercest roar. Benjamin, the wolf at the gate. And when he strikes, he does not miss. Chapter 11. The division of the land. When the Israelites crossed into the Promised Land, it wasn't kings or councils who drew the lines. It was God himself. Under the leadership of Joshua, the 12 tribes received their inheritance, not according to power or preference, but according to prophetic order. Divide the land by lot, the Lord commanded, and let each tribe know its portion. This was no ordinary land grab. It was the fulfillment of a centuries-old promise. From Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, every boundary marked was soaked in destiny. Judah, the tribe of royalty, was planted in the south, a foundation for kings. Ephraim, Joseph's son and symbol of fruitfulness, took the heart of Canaan, the center. Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh settled east of the Jordan, having chosen fertile ground even before the full conquest was complete. But what of Levi? The priestly tribe received no territory, no borders, no inheritance like the others. Why? Because God himself was their portion. Scattered throughout Israel in designated cities, the Levites were planted not in one place, but among all tribes to teach, to minister, to represent heaven on earth. The division of the land wasn't just geographical, it was spiritual, a divine layout, a holy map, a reminder that God doesn't just give land, he gives purpose. Each tribe knew where they belonged. And Levi belonged in his presence. The 12 tribes entered the Promised Land with power in their hands and promise in their hearts. They settled, they built, they thrived. From wilderness wanderers, they became warriors and workers, a people planted in purpose. The covenant was alive and the land flowed with milk and honey. But prosperity can dull the senses. And so slowly, subtly, fatally, disobedience crept in. The people forgot their God. Idolatry replaced worship. Intermarriage blurred identity. Injustice defiled the law. God, in his mercy, sent prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, voices crying out in the wilderness, pleading for repentance, warning of judgment. But the tribes turned deaf ears. Their hearts grew hard. The covenant was broken and judgment fell like a sword. In 722 BC, the mighty Assyrian Empire descended like a storm. The northern kingdom, 10 tribes strong, was conquered, crushed, and carried into exile. 10 tribes, gone. Scattered across foreign lands, assimilated, forgotten by man, but not by God. To history they became the lost tribes of Israel, swallowed by time, dissolved in captivity. But here's the question that still echoes through the ages. Were they truly lost? Or is the story not yet finished? What man calls lost, God may call hidden. What history calls gone, prophecy calls waiting. And what was scattered by judgment may one day be gathered in glory. They're called the lost tribes of Israel, scattered, erased, forgotten by history. But the Bible tells a different story. I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, yet not the smallest grain shall fall to the ground. He who scattered Israel will gather him. Lost to man? Maybe, but never lost to God. Even James, the brother of Jesus, opened his letter with these words, "To the 12 tribes scattered abroad, greetings." They were still out there, still scattered, still part of the promise. And here's where it gets real. Could the descendants of these tribes be hiding in plain sight, scattered across Africa, surviving the horrors of the Middle Passage? Could it be that Black Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Brazilians carry the ancient blood of Israel? The Bible says, "You shall go into Egypt again in ships, and there you shall be sold." Sound familiar? We're not saying every Black person is an Israelite, but we are saying the bloodline didn't vanish, it dispersed. And some of it may very well flow in you. The prophets spoke of a second Exodus, a divine regathering from every corner of the earth. "I will take the children of Israel from among the nations and make them one nation again." And in Revelation, 12,000 sealed from each tribe, 144,000 chosen, protected, purposed. The story is not over. The tribes are not lost, and God's covenant still stands. It's time to rise, to study the word, to seek the truth, to walk in obedience. So what does all of this mean for you? You are part of a greater sacred story, a holy remnant, a people not erased but prophesied. The world may label you lost, scattered, broken, but God calls you chosen. Because the Lion of Judah is roaring again, and the tribes of Israel are awakening from their sleep. They're coming home, and you might be one of them. If this message stirred your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and drop a comment below with your thoughts or testimony. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so you never miss a word of truth, revelation, or revival. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay rooted, and may God bless you always. What if everything you thought you knew about the lost tribes of Israel was a lie? The so-called vanished tribes were never lost, but deliberately hidden? What if their descendants are walking this earth right now in Africa, in America, in the islands, maybe even in you? This isn't just about history. This is about identity, legacy, prophecy, and the spiritual war to erase the truth from the memory of mankind. Today, we're going deeper than pulpits will preach. A truth buried under centuries of colonization, whitewashing, and silence. A truth that the powers of this world, religious and political, have spent centuries keeping in the dark. Welcome to Part 2, The Hidden Tribes and the Forbidden Evidence. History tells us a tale of disappearance, that in 722 BC, after the mighty Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, 10 of the 12 tribes vanished into the sands of time, erased from records, forgotten by men. But I have a question for you. Can God lose what he has chosen? Can a people bound by an everlasting covenant be swallowed up by exile? In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away to Assyria. Yes, they were taken. Yes, they were scattered, but lost? Not for a moment. The Bible never says the tribes were destroyed, only that they were dispersed. And our God is not a God of chaos or amnesia. He is a God of preservation. He does not abandon his people in exile. He hides them, plants them like seeds, letting them take root in foreign soil until the appointed time of restoration. Even the New Testament bears witness to the 12 tribes scattered among the nations. Scattered, not extinct. Tibun, not erased. These tribes were still known to the apostles, still alive in the spirit, still walking this earth in flesh. So let us ask, if they were hidden, who hid them? And more importantly, why? Because when a people carry divine blood, the world will always try to bury them. But what the world buries, God resurrects. The so-called lost tribes were never lost. They were concealed, protected, preserved by providence, waiting for this generation, your generation, to uncover what centuries tried to erase. And if they are to be revealed, what if that revelation starts with you? Let's tear down a lie that's been preached through maps, textbooks, and colonial thinking. The idea that Israel and Africa were separate lands, separate peoples, and separate destinies. Look closely at any modern map and you'll see it. A slim blue slash called the Red Sea, splitting the so-called Middle East from the African continent. But that divide, it wasn't drawn by God. It was carved by man, and by time. Long before political borders, before empires and invasions, there was one land, one cradle of creation, the Afro-Asiatic landmass. A sacred union where Africa and ancient Israel stood not as neighbors, but as parts of a single divine landscape. The soil that bore Abraham, the rivers that flowed past Moses, and the mountains that watched over the Exodus, they were not confined to a continent. They flowed seamlessly across the earth before men called it Africa or Asia. So ask yourself, why were you taught otherwise? Because if Israel and Africa were once one land, then the blood of Israel didn't just wander into Africa, it was already there. It was home. And when the Assyrians scattered the 10 tribes, where else would they go but the lands that already carried their likeness, their rhythm, their God? But you didn't learn that in school, did you? You weren't told that the boundaries separating Israel from Africa are artificial, fabricated to disconnect a people from their prophetic identity. It's time to reconnect the map. It's time to reclaim the truth. Israel and Africa were never divided. Only our understanding was. The lost tribes of Israel were never truly lost, just relocated, renamed, and reborn under the African sun. The blood of Abraham still flows through the veins of warriors, priests, and kings across the African continent, not just in spirit, but in ritual, language, and DNA. You see, history tried to sever the link between Africa and Israel, but the evidence, oral, cultural, genetic, refuses to be silenced. Across the motherland, the echoes of the covenant ring loud. Let's unveil the hidden lineages, tribe by tribe, truth by truth. Reuben, found among the Mandinka of Mali, Senegal, and Guinea. The Mandinka people are not strangers to holiness. They follow purity laws strikingly similar to the Torah, including circumcision on the 8th day. Just like the Israelites. But what sets them apart is not just what they do, it's what they remember. Their lineage is not written in scrolls, but etched in oral memory and family tradition. The very rhythm of the name Reuben can still be heard in their Manding languages. This isn't coincidence, it's inheritance. Simeon, found among the Yoruba of Nigeria. The Yoruba people speak of ancestors who journeyed from the east. Their customs mirror those of ancient Israel. Their worship practices, their festivals, even elements of their language sound like echoes from Jerusalem. Some Yoruba words align with Hebrew roots. Their temple rites, structure of priesthood, and community laws reflect a heritage that reaches far beyond West Africa. They didn't adopt Israelite practices, they preserved them. Levi, found among the Lemba of Zimbabwe and South Africa, the Lemba are more than a cultural anomaly. They are a priesthood preserved. Known for observing kosher dietary laws, circumcising their sons, and keeping the Sabbath.